About a month ago, I received the news that would change everything. My aunt called to tell me that my father's health had been declining rapidly. As an ICU nurse, I knew exactly what that meant, and my heart sank at the implications. I immediately requested time off from the nursing home where I worked to be with him. "Marie, honey, your father. He's not doing well." My aunt's voice cracked over the phone. "The doctors say his heart condition is getting worse." My mind raced through all the possible scenarios. I'd seen too many similar cases in my line of work. Despite our complicated family situation, with my parents' divorce and Mom's remarriage, Dad had always been my rock. He was the one who supported my decision to become a nurse, after seeing how passionate I was about helping others. "I'll be there as soon as I can," I promised, already mentally packing my bags. I moved temporarily to Dad's place, determined to ensure he received the best care possible. Working in healthcare had taught me the importance of being there for patients, but this was different. This was my dad. The separation after my parents' divorce had been hard enough, with me staying with Mom while Dad moved out. Our weekend visits and holiday gatherings became precious moments, but they could never replace having him around all the time. The bond I shared with Dad was special. He understood me in a way Mom never did, especially after she married James, my stepfather. Dad had been there through every major decision in my life, including my choice to pursue nursing. He'd seen how the experience of helping others had changed me, had made me stronger. But fate had other plans. Just a week after I arrived, Dad suffered a massive heart attack. Despite my medical training, despite everything I knew about emergency care, I couldn't save him. The helplessness I felt in that moment, watching the monitors flatline, hearing the code blue being called, it was nothing like what I'd experienced with other patients. This was my father, and I was losing him. As Dad's only child and a healthcare professional, I took charge of the funeral arrangements. My first call was to Mom. I thought she'd want to know that her ex-husband, the father of her child, had passed away. The response I got wasn't just cold. It was glacial. "Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "Dad's gone. He had a heart attack." The silence that followed was deafening. For a moment, I thought the connection had dropped. "Mom? Did you hear what I said?" "I heard you the first time," she replied, her voice devoid of any emotion. "What do you want me to do about it?" The words hit me like a physical blow. I knew Mom had moved on, had remarried, and started a new chapter with James and his kids, Emma and Lucas. But this wasn't about their failed marriage or any lingering resentment. This was about me losing my father. A simple, "I'm sorry for your loss," would have been enough. Instead, her response left me feeling more alone than ever. I ended the call without another word, my hands shaking as I set down the phone. There was no time for a breakdown. I had a funeral to plan, relatives to notify, and endless paperwork to handle. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a series of events that would test not only my patience but also my understanding of what family truly means. At home, the betrayal. The next blow came from an unexpected source. My neighbor, Mrs. Johnson, called me while I was still handling the funeral arrangements. Her daughter and I had grown up together, so I assumed she was calling with condolences. I couldn't have been more wrong. "Marie, dear," she began hesitantly, "I hate to ask this, but why didn't you tell us you were moving out?" I froze, my nursing ID badge still in my hand, as I was preparing for my next shift at the care facility. "Moving out. Mrs. Johnson, I'm not moving anywhere. I'll be coming home after the funeral arrangements are done." That's when she revealed something that made my blood run cold. My mother had been telling everyone in the neighborhood that I had suddenly decided to move out. Under this cover, she'd been systematically going through my room, selecting items to either sell or throw away. My heart stopped when Mrs. Johnson mentioned specific items: my guitar, my medical textbooks, and worst of all, the vintage stethoscope Dad had given me when I graduated nursing school. "She's been selling everything, Marie." Mrs. Johnson's voice was gentle but concerned. "I saw your nursing awards in the donation pile yesterday." The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. Mom was clearing out my room to make space for Emma and Lucas, my step-siblings. I'd always tried to be good to them, understanding that being teenagers in a blended family wasn't easy. But this was a whole new level of betrayal. My hands were shaking as I dialed Mom's number. Before she could even say hello, the words burst out of me. "How dare you sell my things?" I demanded, my voice trembling with rage. "Those awards were for years of hard work. That stethoscope was Dad's gift." There was a moment of startled silence before Mom responded, her voice flustered. Who told you about this?" "That's what you're concerned about." "How I found out." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Answer me, Mom. Why are you doing this?" After a moment of uncomfortable silence, she sighed. "James and the kids need space, Marie. They deserve to make this house their home, too. You're hardly ever here anyway, always working those long shifts at the nursing home. This isn't about sharing space." I cut her off. "I've always been good to Emma and Lucas. But selling my belongings while I'm away dealing with Dad's death, that's just cruel, Mom." Her next words left me speechless. "Well, what's done is done. I've already spent the money on new things for Emma and Lucas." The betrayal cut deep. She'd sold my achievements, my memories, my connection to Dad, all to buy new things for my step-siblings. And she'd done it while I was arranging my father's funeral. The will's discovery. What my mother didn't know, what none of us knew, was that fate had different plans. While sorting through Dad's affairs with my Uncle Michael, a respected lawyer in his own right, we discovered something unexpected: a will. As a healthcare worker, I was used to dealing with end-of-life documentation, but this caught me completely off guard. "I don't understand," I said to Uncle Michael, staring at the document in his hands. "Dad always said he didn't believe in legal documents when it came to family. He used to tell me that legality destroyed relationships." Uncle Michael nodded, adjusting his glasses as he examined the will. "Your father was a practical man, Marie. After the divorce, he wanted to ensure your future was secure." The contents of the will left me stunned. Not only had Dad never signed the house over to Mom after the divorce, but he had left it solely to me. All these years, Mom had been living in a house she thought was hers, completely unaware that legally it would pass to me upon Dad's death. Initially, my medical training kicked in. Assess the situation, stay calm, plan the next steps. I wanted to handle this rationally, maybe work out some kind of arrangement with Mom. After all, despite everything, she was still my mother, and I understood the challenges of providing for a blended family. But after discovering what she'd done with my belongings, especially my nursing awards, and the stethoscope that represented Dad's pride in my career choice, all bets were off. Uncle Michael helped me handle the legal aspects while I focused on my shifts at the nursing home, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. The confrontation. When I finally returned home, I brought Uncle Michael with me. Mom's face when she saw us walk in together was a study in shock. She was preparing dinner, and the knife she was holding clattered against the counter. "Marie, what's going on?" Her eyes darted between me and Uncle Michael. "Why did you bring a lawyer?" James, my stepfather, was lounging in his usual spot in the living room. The smug look on his face suggested he thought this was some kind of empty threat. If only they knew. "Mom, we need to talk." I said, keeping my voice steady. The same tone I used with difficult patients' families. There's something important we need to discuss. Uncle Michael laid out the property documents on the kitchen table. As Mom and James scanned the papers, I watched the color drain from their faces. The realization that the house they'd been so casually redecorating, the house they'd been clearing my things from, wasn't actually theirs, hit them like a physical blow. "This can't be right," Mom stammered, her hands shaking as she held the documents. "The house. I've been living here for years. It's mine. Actually," Uncle Michael explained calmly, "your ex-husband never transferred the property title after the divorce. Legally, the house remained in his name, and now it belongs to Marie." The escalation. The room erupted into chaos. Mom's face contorted with anger and disbelief, while James jumped up from his chair, his previous smugness replaced by barely contained rage. "This is ridiculous," Mom shouted, her voice trembling. "I was his wife. I raised our child in this house. You can't just take it away." I stood my ground, drawing on the same strength I used during crisis situations at the nursing home. "Mom, this isn't about taking anything away. This is about legal rights that were always there." James stepped forward, his face red with anger. "You entitled little." He jabbed a finger in Uncle Michael's direction. "You put her up to this, didn't you? Manipulating a grieving daughter for your own gain?" What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Before anyone could react, James lunged at Uncle Michael, shoving him hard. My medical training kicked in instantly. Assess the situation, protect the vulnerable, maintain control. "Stop," I shouted, rushing to help Uncle Michael regain his balance. "This is assault, James." Mom was screaming at James to calm down while trying to hold him back. I could hear Emma and Lucas upstairs, their footsteps betraying their presence at the top of the stairs. My heart ached knowing they were witnessing this chaos. Uncle Michael, maintaining his composure, took out his phone. "I'm calling the police. Mr. Miller, I strongly suggest you think about your next move. Assault is a serious offense, and you have witnesses." James looked like he might charge again, but Mom's grip on his arm tightened. "James, stop. Think about the kids." When the police arrived, they took statements from everyone. James tried to downplay it as a family misunderstanding, but the officers weren't buying it. They gave him a stern warning and told him to leave the premises for the night. As he was leaving, James turned to me with a menacing glare. "This isn't over, Nurse Know-It-All." The resolution. After the dust settled, I gathered everyone in the living room. Looking at Mom's tear-stained face and my step-siblings' worried expressions, I made my decision. "Here's how this is going to work," I said, using my professional voice, firm but compassionate. "Mom and the kids can stay, but James is no longer welcome here. And there will be rent, starting next month, at fair market value." Mom started to protest, but one look at Uncle Michael silenced her. Later, I pulled Emma and Lucas aside. At 16 and 14, they were old enough to understand what was happening, but young enough to be scared by it. "Listen," I told them, softening my tone, "none of this is your fault. Whatever happens between the adults, you'll always have a place here if you need it. I'm not just your stepsister. I'm also a healthcare worker, and I don't turn my back on people who need help." Update 1. The aftermath. A week has passed since the confrontation, and I'm still trying to process everything. Working night shifts at the nursing home has become almost a refuge. At least there, I know exactly what my role is and what's expected of me. The situation at home remains tense. Mom has developed two equally frustrating tactics. When she's not giving me the silent treatment, she's launching into guilt trips that would make my most difficult patients seem reasonable. I carried you for 9 months, and after all I sacrificed for you, have become her favorite phrases, usually delivered while I'm trying to get some sleep between shifts. James hasn't shown his face since the police incident, which has been a blessing. Uncle Michael, despite the bruising from the shove, has been incredibly supportive. When I expressed guilt over him getting hurt, he just smiled and said, "That's what family is for." Coming from someone who actually understands what family means, those words meant everything. We met with a real estate agent to establish fair market rent. As a nurse, I'm used to dealing with precise measurements and exact dosages, but property values were completely new territory for me. Mom, predictably, contested the figure, claiming the house couldn't possibly be worth that much. The agent calmly pointed out that the suggested rent was actually below market rate for the area. The most positive development has been my relationship with Emma and Lucas. The other day, they shyly approached me during my coffee break before my night shift. "We saved these," Emma said, holding out a small box. Inside was my old nursing school graduation watch and several other small items they'd managed to rescue from Mom's purge. "We knew they were important to you." Looking at these teenagers who had shown more understanding and empathy than their father or my mother, I felt a mix of gratitude and responsibility. I've been completely honest with them about the situation, treating them like the young adults they are. We've had long conversations about everything: their feelings about their dad's behavior, their worries about the future, and yes, even their guilt about what their stepmom, my mom, did with my belongings. My medical background has taught me the importance of preventive care, so I've made it clear that if their father tries to contact them or shows up at the house, they need to let me or Mom know immediately. I'm trying to get everything sorted before my upcoming shift changes at the nursing home. Update 2. The background. As a nurse, I'm trained to look for patterns, to notice the warning signs before a situation becomes critical. Looking back, there were so many red flags I chose to ignore. After my parents' divorce, the custody arrangement placed me primarily with Mom, while Dad had regular visitation rights. This worked reasonably well until James entered the picture. The problem started almost immediately after their wedding. Our house, where I'd spent countless nights studying for my nursing certification, began feeling less and less like home. James had a way of making casual suggestions that felt like threats. During dinner, he'd casually mention how many young nurses he knew who lived independently, or he'd ask pointed questions about my savings, always under the guise of showing concern. "You must be making decent money at the nursing home," he'd say, his tone deceptively light. "Ever think about getting your own place?" I was only 27 at the time, focused on building my career in healthcare and saving for additional certifications. The suggestion of moving out felt both premature and unsettling. James also developed a habit of trying to redistribute my possessions to his children. It started small, lending my medical reference books to Emma for her science projects, or my laptop to Lucas for schoolwork. While I didn't mind sharing, especially since both kids were respectful with my things, the requests became increasingly presumptuous. One particular incident stands out. Mom approached me after a night shift, when I was exhausted from a 12-hour rotation at the ICU. "Marie, honey," she began, using her sweetest voice, "Lucas needs a laptop for school. Could he use yours?" "Use it occasionally." "Sure," I replied, already knowing where this was heading. "Actually," Mom hesitated, "we were thinking he could have it permanently." I was shocked. This was my work laptop, containing patient notes and study materials for my upcoming certification exam. When I refused, James' reaction was explosive. He accused me of being selfish, of not caring about my step-siblings' education. The irony of him questioning my commitment to education while I was working towards another nursing certification wasn't lost on me. These incidents continued, each one chipping away at my sense of belonging in my own home. Yet I stayed partly because I was saving money for additional medical training, and partly because I held on to the hope that Mom would eventually remember I was her child too. Looking back now, as a healthcare professional, I recognize these as symptoms of a deeper problem. Just like how certain medical conditions show warning signs before becoming acute, my family situation had been showing red flags for years. It took Dad's death and the subsequent events to finally make me face the diagnosis. This wasn't a healthy family dynamic, and it needed intervention. Update 3. The final revelation. Yesterday brought another unexpected turn in this ongoing family drama. I received a call during my break at the nursing home from someone I never expected to hear from, Claire Miller, Emma and Lucas's biological mother. In our small medical community, news travels fast, and she had heard about the recent developments. Marie? Her voice was hesitant. I'm James' ex-wife. Could we meet for coffee? As a nurse, I'm trained to expect the unexpected, but this caught me off guard. We agreed to meet at a cafe near the hospital where I sometimes pick up extra shifts. After some brief pleasantries, she got straight to the point, revealing something that added another layer to this already complex situation. James hasn't been paying his court-ordered child support, she explained, her hands wrapped tightly around her coffee cup. He's been using the excuse of supporting your mother's household to justify not paying what he owes. My medical training has taught me to look for patterns, and suddenly everything clicked into place. James's insistence on maintaining control over the living arrangements, his aggressive reaction to the house ownership revelation, it all made sense. By having Emma and Lucas live with him, he could argue he was directly supporting them, thereby avoiding his financial obligations to their mother. He keeps moving them around, Claire continued, her voice breaking slightly. I haven't seen them properly in years. He uses the housing situation as an excuse to maintain control. When she asked if I would be willing to testify about the living situation if it came to a legal battle, I agreed immediately. As a healthcare professional, I've learned the importance of standing up for what's right, even when it's uncomfortable. I shared this information with Mom later that evening, between my shifts. Initially, she was in denial, defending James with the same fervor she'd used to justify selling my belongings. But as the evidence mounted, I watched the realization sink in. She'd been manipulated just as much as everyone else. Even though I haven't fully forgiven her for her actions, seeing her vulnerability in that moment stirred my professional instinct to help. She was now facing her own form of betrayal, though honestly, it's still hard for me to fully sympathize with her, given our recent history. The focus now is on arranging a meeting between Claire and her children. As someone who understands the importance of family connections through my work with long-term care patients, I know how crucial this reunion could be for Emma and Lucas. In a way, Greg's manipulative behavior has brought an unexpected clarity to our situation. This isn't just about property rights anymore. It's about protecting vulnerable family members and ensuring justice is served. As both a nurse and a daughter, I'm committed to seeing this through to the end.